Welcome to a special mock draft edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside, per usual, our NBA insider Bill Ryder. And look at this. We have two special guests today. We're going four wide. Our 24/7 sports director of scouting, Adam Finkelstein, is here, and our lead NBA draft analyst, Kyle Boone, also making his debut on the program. Gentlemen, welcome to Beyond the Arc.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Very exciting. Bill and I don't know what to do with ourselves. We've never gone four wide. It's going to go great. We're going to do this first time on Beyond the Arc that we're going to do a mock draft. So we had to bring you two guys in because Bill and I focus on the NBA and you guys are obviously draft experts. So we're going to do picks 1 through 14. Adam and Kyle are going to alternate picks, and then Bill and I will try what I suspect, Bill, will be trenchant NBA analysis from the two of us per usual here on Beyond the Arc. Trenchant, why not? We'll do that. And then later in the show, we're going to have an extended Bronny James discussion because we can never have enough Bronny James talk here on Beyond the Arc. But first, we're going to start off with the number one pick in the NBA draft coming up, the Atlanta Hawks. They went 36 and 46 this season. They were the 10th seed in the play-in. They had just a 3% chance to win the lottery, and they pulled it off for the first time in 49 years. They will pick first. Landry Fields, their GM, said he was shocked by this. Got a lot going on in Atlanta. It's going to be very busy offseason for them, but we're going to start it off, Adam, with their pick, number one overall. Who do they got?
Now, we're going to take Zaccharie Risscher, but it comes with a caveat, and that being that we are first looking, or at least exploring, moving this pick. I'm sure you guys will get into this more, but this team is 10 games below 500. They're in the luxury tax. Things are not going well over there. But what Risscher will do is give them a big 3-and-D wing who's showing some more signs of dynamic offense down the stretch here. If you're just starting to follow this draft, then what you need to know is this draft lacks star power. So we are taking a prospect with a very high floor because Risscher is a big wing with a pretty shooting stroke who can also get it done on the defensive end of the floor. He's still playing right now in France, and he's starting to play some of the best basketball of his career. So his overall trajectory is encouraging, and we're seeing some more explosiveness in the open floor. If he can ever turn into more of a creator, guys, this is someone who's got a chance to be a special prospect because right now he is not your typical number one overall guy, but there's no typical overall number one in this draft. Risscher gives us someone who can make an impact on both ends of the floor sooner rather than later.
I think Adam made the most important point of the whole draft. And in talking to folks around the NBA, I don't think I've had a single GM be certain who they would take at number one if they were taking at number one. And this idea that, normally a draft is one and we pretend 2 or 3 deep. There's a sense that it's 5 or 6 deep maybe in terms of who you could take with the first pick. And I think this also, Adam's pick, fits with what I'm hearing Atlanta wants to do. Yes, Landry is the GM, but Nick Ressler, who is the owner's son and has a formal position in the front office, is, as I understand it, really the power. And if you want to be polite to Landry Fields, maybe in conjunction with their general manager. And there's a sense, with things having gone badly, that Quinn Snyder, who's also a part of that triumvirate, more than a coach, he has a lot of influence, that he is leaning toward a rebuild, maybe looking to move on Trae Young. And so the idea of prospects who have huge upside down the line and try and really swing for the fences in this draft because they shouldn't have been one. And again, it's not like there's a Wemby. This makes a lot of sense, not just with the state of this draft, guys, but I think what Atlanta wants to do and thinking more long-term than maybe they were a year ago.
Yeah, and I think there's a few directions, right, that Atlanta could go here. They could go with Alex Sarr, who we showed was the projected favorite to go number one overall right now. Donovan Clingan, I think, could actually make some sense. But I think Risscher, just given where the NBA is right now, big wings who can shoot the basketball, checks those boxes, maybe doesn't project as a future star. But Atlanta, I think, gets a nice safe pick here. I don't hate it for Fink at number one for the Atlanta Hawks.
A lot of moving parts for the Atlanta Hawks this offseason. I mean, as Bill mentioned, you have this interesting dynamic in the front office, and they finally land the first pick, and you'd think, oh, isn't this exciting? But now it's in a draft where nobody can agree on who that first pick should be. And, they got to figure out if they're going to move Trae Young or they're going to keep DeJounte Murray. Clint Capella could be another guy on the move. Beyond Jalen Johnson and Onyeka Okongwu, I'm like, you could move everybody out and I would be fine with that. But all right, so they've got the first pick. We talked about that one. We're going to go to number 2 here. It should be the Wiz. We've decided to complicate this mock draft, and now the Wiz have decided to trade with the Blazers. The Blazers are trading picks 7 and 14 to move up in this fake draft, along with future considerations. The Wiz are going to fall back. They could use a zillion things, so they're going to get 2 picks here. We'll get to them a little bit later on. But Kyle, the Blazers, not a good season for them last year, 21 and 61, dead last in a loaded Western Conference. They got Anthony Simons, who I like a lot. Scoot Henderson didn't get off to a great start as a rookie. We'll see whether or not he can develop. And they have 2 more years of DeAndre Ayton at a bloated salary. I like to call him more expensive Andre Drummond. Which way are the Blazers going here?
Yeah, let's shake it up. Let's get a little weird. I'm going to go with Donovan Clingan here at number 1. Donovan Clingan from UConn. He was second in college basketball last season in terms of block rate. The season before that, a man named Derek Lively ranked second in block rate. And we've seen throughout this postseason, he's been very, very good and really come on strong for the Dallas Mavericks. Clingan, a 2-time national champion. I think he was the most important piece for the UConn Huskies this last postseason in winning the national championship. A really good, I think, high floor, plug and play type of center who I still believe in Scoot Henderson. I think he is the future in their backcourt. Pairing him with Donovan Clingan, who's really good defensively, who I think can be a playmaker in the paint, and I think can be eventually shoot it at a high level from beyond the arc. There's a lot to like here with Donovan Clingan, still very young, still learning the game. And so I'm going to take him number 2 for the Portland Trail Blazers.
Guys, I throw it up to the rim to my guy Boone, who I like to call the nicest man in America. All he has to do is dunk the ball. Take Alex Sarr. That's the odds-on favorite to go number 1. And he goes Donovan Clingan. And I just, I don't know. I don't know that Mike Schmitz is pulling the trigger on Donovan. Not to suggest that the assistant GM is making the pick, but I think I just suggested the assistant GM is making the pick. I don't know that Donovan Clingan is the guy at 2. I think if Sarr, listen, Sarr right now is the betting favorite, as we initially showed, to go number 1. So if he were to fall to 2, and we're mocking this out as if Portland moves up to take him, I co-sign absolutely everything Boone said. Clingan is a defensively dominant big man who's got untapped offensive potential. Boone mentioned the shooting potential. I subscribe to that as well. I think he's got a chance to do it. You don't find a whole lot of guys who are 7'3" who have changed their body the way Donovan Clingan has in his 2 years at UConn. This guy has done some massive work in the conditioning department, and you even saw it this year. He battled some injuries early on. His playing weight got up a little bit. Then he got back down to 270. And you saw him be the most dominant defensive player in that NCAA tournament. So I like the fit. I just don't know that I would go with him this high at 2 with Sarr still on the board.
I'm going to defend Kyle here because maybe Kyle has gone like super meta and is really channeling how, not everybody, but some people view this Portland front office. And Joe Cronin, who is a very nice guy like Kyle, is not universally believed to know what he's doing in Portland. Doesn't mean that he doesn't. Doesn't mean he won't prove people wrong. He's under massive amounts of pressure. But maybe Kyle was talking to some of the people I was talking to in Chicago who think that Scoot pick and the pressure Cronin will probably be under a little bit less from a year from now will lead them to make a mistake in this draft, that maybe they're not as smart as they thought they were. A lot of people did not, for various reasons, like Neil O'Shea, the former GM. And so your enemy's enemies are your friends. That doesn't necessarily make you good at your job. Kyle, I see what you're doing. You're going deep in the weeds here. You're channeling maybe what Portland would do for the non-believers and what that front office is about, and I respect the move here on the mock draft.
Yeah, Kyle, in this mock draft parallel universe that we've created for ourselves where the Blazers end up moving up, maybe this means they move on from DeAndre Ayton. I'm not a big DeAndre Ayton dominating fan. He rebounds the ball well. I called him more expensive Andre Drummond, but that's what he is. He doesn't do much. He doesn't shoot. He doesn't offer enough rim protection, and he doesn't go to work when there's ice on the road. So I'd be fine with Donovan Clingan in and DeAndre Ayton out. So that's great. We'll move on to the Rockets here. I've already lost track. I think it's Adam next. 41 and 41. 31, 11th in the West last year. First year with Ime Udoka. There was a time there when they were on a hot winning streak where Bill and I were talking about them every show. We were very excited about this young core. I'm interested to see what they do here, Adam, because they've got Alperen Sengun, who I'm hugely high on. Jalen Green looked really good second half of the season. They've got Jabari Smith and FVV and Dylan Brooks, and Amin Thompson came on hot. All of a sudden, this roster is, I'm not going to say it's loaded and that there's not any space. They can obviously use help, but there isn't a ton of space here. So which way are they going?
Well, I think in this scenario where Alex Sarr would fall to number 3, they would jump all over him. It would be very reminiscent of what happened 2 years ago when Jabari Smith was the betting favorite to go number 1 up until just hours before the draft, and then he ended up slipping to Houston at number 3. And here's the scouting report on Sarr. You're talking about an extremely mobile 7-footer who's got a ton of defensive upside and versatility. And when you look at Houston and what they do and do not have, a backup big man initially who could come in, be versatile defensively, guard pick and roll in a few different ways, and then grow into a different role. I'd be very curious to hear what you guys think about whether Sengun and Jalen Green fit together long term. But this gives them another alternative in that path in case they have to move on from one of those two guys. And again, this is the odds-on favorite to go number 1 overall in the draft. The reason why I did not take him 1, and perhaps why Boone didn't take him 2, is because he's got a long way to go offensively. The shooting potential people are betting on, but it's not there yet. He's got a narrow build and doesn't play with a whole lot of offensive force at the rim. So he's not yet a lob threat or a big-time finisher out of the dunker spot. So we're going to need to see a lot of growth offensively, but defensively, there's a ton of value. And I think that fits with this Houston roster. And of course, what they're trying to do with this new coaching staff.
Yeah, the Rockets would certainly be celebrating if this guy fell to them. This is largely the person who most people, as you said, think will go number 1 overall. Again, there is a diversity of opinion out there. This is a really good Rockets team. They're better at the end of the season. The West is going to be loaded. We've talked about it. Their window is 2 to 4 years from now. It is not next year to actually compete. So if you got a high upside guy and you've got a guy in Udoka who just showed last year, and to a degree, different situation in Boston, he's good at developing players and putting in a winning culture. Makes all the sense in the world. And Kyle, it feels like if this is what happens, Houston got real lucky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this
You're
is
adding
exciting.
some size. And you know, I feel,
Go ahead,
excuse
Kyle.
me, John. I feel like with Jalen Green already there, Alperen Sengun, and I think Sarr would be able to play off of each other very well. I think that'd be a really nice front court to build around long term in Houston.
We forgot also, though, Steve, they also have Steven Adams. All of a sudden, that front court is getting pretty packed, but would be interesting if he fell to 3 and see how Ime ends up dealing with that. All right, we've got 3 picks in the books already. Our mock draft is going to continue coming up with the Spurs and Victor Wembanyama on the clock. You're watching Beyond the Arc right here on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to a special mock draft edition of Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez and Bill Ryder, joined by our 2 NBA draft experts, Adam and Kyle. And Kyle, you're up next. The Spurs here, 22-60 last year, second to last in the West. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama, the sky is the limit for him, the rookie of the year, first team all defense. He looks amazing. I like Devin Vassell. Beyond that, I could take or leave basically the entire team. Just from my perspective, last year they started out desperately in need of a point guard. They had Jeremy Sohan there. That didn't work out. Trey Jones came in. I'm interested to see which way you're going in I like your chair here, your commander chair, your gamer chair. Dream us up a pick here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Stephon Castle from UConn. Kind of a point guard. He thinks he's a point guard. I think he can be a point guard at some point. One of the best defensive guards in this class. He consistently drew the toughest assignments for UConn on a team that won the national championship. Last season rated 94th percentile as a pick and roll defender, according to Synergy data, 74th percentile in pick and roll on offense, a lot of untapped creation ability. And he made some sacrifices for that UConn team last year. But I think San Antonio is going to want to upgrade its backcourt, add some talent to surround Victor Wembanyama. I think Stephon Castle checks a lot of those boxes.
I mean, John already hit it. This is a project about building around Wemby. So combo guard, 2-way player, can untap creatively some of the talent around him. That is Wemby and hopefully other players that we'll add in this draft in the years ahead. Obviously, this is an organization under R.C. Buford that does a great job not just identifying talent, the talent you've identified, Kyle, but developing that talent. So this is, I love what I'm hearing. This is the kind of, San Antonio needs a lot of things, but what you're describing are the building blocks to surround Wemby with for what should be a really, again, 2 to 3 years from now, really good team that maybe competes that early in the West.
All right. I thought Adam was going to follow. Well, guess not. We're going to move on here, but I do like this.
I'll say this, guys. One of us is a UConn alum, and believe it or not, it is not Kyle.
Oh, there we go. Well, congratulations to your Huskies and pairing that with Victor Wembanyama. I like that they would be on the same timeline too in terms of their age. And this is exactly, they definitely need some backcourt help. So congratulations to the San Antonio Spurs. All right, the Detroit Pistons, the worst team in basketball last year, 14-68 under new management. Trajan Langdon is in, Troy Weaver is out. Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, I think those are your two main building blocks. Your mileage may vary on Jaden Ivey. And then after that, Asar Thompson started out hot. And then Monty decided, you know what? I don't like him playing so well. I'm going to take away his minutes and give them to Bojan Bogdanovic for reasons surpassing understanding. But now he's in New York, so maybe they'll reinsert him into the lineup here. Adam, the Pistons, they could use a zillion things. Which way are they going?
They're going to go with Matas Buzelis, and full disclosure, Ron Holland is the highest ranked player on my board, but I'm going with Buzelis here because I think when you look at this Pistons lineup, the real glaring hole is at the 4 spot, right? I mean, you mentioned Jalen Duren, you mentioned Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, but who plays the 4 long term? As much as they tried to play 2 centers at one time, I'm not sure that Isaiah Stewart is the long term answer. What they get with Buzelis is a mismatch 4-man. He's got really good size. He's someone who made his mark in high school as a big playmaker, believe it or not. A lot of the draft community is kind of talking about him like he's a shooter. Shooting numbers were not good this year with Ignite. But if you watched him in high school, he actually played with the ball in his hands in the EYBL with Expressions Elite last season. So I think he's got a lot of mismatch potential. And although he's always wanted to hear he's a guard, he's wanted to hear he's a 3, when you put him at the 4, that's when that mismatch ability becomes that much more deadly. And I'll also say this is a player who historically has not been as competitive as he needs to be on the defensive end of the floor, but has a playmaking upside. When he's motivated, he can fly around the court. He can get his hands on a lot of different balls. He can block shots, get in passing lanes, the whole gamut. If Monty Williams can get him to buy into that and then allow him to utilize his full offensive versatility, he could be a really good fit with some of the other good young pieces Detroit has.
John began this part of the conversation, the mock draft, talking about how they're the worst team in the NBA. That's not just on the floor, and they were bad on the floor. Now, hopefully this new front office knows what they're doing because this is a rebuild coming off of a rebuild. They've got to be getting these picks right. And the good news is at 5 in this draft, unlike maybe 5 in other drafts, if other GMs have made some mistakes, as we've talked about it, the margin between 1 and 5, and maybe even for some folks 1 to 7, isn't that vast. So hopefully this is the beginning of a long process, but at least a successful process in Detroit.
Yeah, I like Trajan Langdon too, but he definitely has his work cut out for him. We'll see what he can pull off here. All right, moving along to the Charlotte Hornets, who are picking 6th. Perennially a terrible franchise, 21-61, 13th in the East. Steve Clifford is out as head coach. He's moving into a front office capacity as an advisor. Charles Lee is in. Jeff Peterson is the new president of basketball ops. We'll see if Bill has some insight there. LaMelo Ball just cannot stay healthy. He only played 22 games last year. He had an ankle, just 36 the year before. The only bright spot for this team is Brandon Miller. First team all rookie. I thought he looked really good. His favorite player is Paul George. He's a little bit of a Paul George starter kit. They could use everything. So Kyle, which way are they going?
Yeah, I considered Nikola Topic here, just with the playmaking, the size, but I'm going to go with Ron Holland, who Finkelstein just mentioned a minute ago. He led G League Ignite in scoring and in steals this past season. He is the highest rated prospect still on the board right now. I think he has the best mixtape of all the prospects in this class. He's a dynamic playmaker. He's very athletic. If you watch his highlight reel, I mean, just the way that he's able to get up and put some dunks through is really impressive. And at the NBA draft combine, I think he was posed a question about the fact that there is no consensus number 1 in this class. And he kind of snarled hey, I'm that dude. And I like kind of the swagger that he carries himself with. He's very confident, made some strides this past season. And I think he's going to end up going somewhere in this range in this draft.
This is an organization that, again, this is why you're drafting high, total reset at every level of the organization. You're right, John. LaMelo cannot stay healthy. but his dad assured us here on the podcast talking to me that everything's going to be fine. So are you not buying what he's selling? And I do know that in Charlotte, look, you don't have a lot of choices if you're this organization. You're not a destination for free agents. You have to get it right in the draft. They want to believe that LaMelo Ball can stay healthy and be a key piece because they have to believe it. And if they can have him and Brandon Miller be two guys that can play 80 games together, and you add some wing play and you get some depth over the years, they think that that's a formula that they can use for success. So I like the pick. It all still hinges largely on whether Ball can be healthy. It's a question mark, but when you're in Charlotte, guys, you don't have a choice. With that talent, you got to hope he finds a way to stay healthy, and you hope this pick works out as an addition to what they've already got.
Bill, I can't believe that you would think that LeVar Ball was selling you a bill of goods. That was an excellent interview, by the way. People should go back and check that out. That's on our YouTube page, which you can find at Beyond the Arc CBS, and you can check out Bill's interview with LeVar Ball. Subscribe, hit the like button while you're there too. And by the way, Kyle, you know your audience. You've come to the right place. When you mention the words mixtape and highlight reel, Bill will tell you I watched about 25 seconds of Bronny James shooting in an empty gym, and all of a sudden I'm in. We're going to get to Bronny later on. But I do love a mixtape, and I do love a highlight reel. All right, we're going to continue our mock draft. The Wizards are going to be on the clock after we take a short break. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. You're watching us on CBS Sports Network. You can also find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download and subscribe. All right, we're continuing with our mock draft here. In this universe that we have created, the Wizards, who had the second pick, have moved back. They need too much stuff, so now they're going to pick 7 and 14. They were 15 and 67 last year, 14th and a bad Eastern Conference. Michael Winger is running basketball ops. Brian Keefe is now the new head coach. Kyle Kuzma, this is a team that Kyle Kuzma got a chance to leave and go to the Mavs, and he said, no, I need to be a Wizard for reasons surpassing understanding. Jordan Poole is also on this team, a perennial shocked in a fool candidate. Really bad roster. I mean, they've got Denny and Bilal Coulibaly and not a Corey Crisp, but your mileage may vary. Not a great roster here, Adam. What do you think they need? Which way are they going?
Yeah, so they're going to draft Reed Sheppard, and reason being, and Bill, I'm going to be curious of your take. I think they have 3 players long-term. Like, I think this is the worst roster in the NBA. I know they didn't necessarily have the worst record, but in Reed Sheppard, they get arguably the most reliable human being in this draft. I mean, in terms of the intangibles, in terms of the competitiveness, the basketball IQ, all of that stuff is absolutely indisputable and off the charts. On top of that, the shooting splits he put up last year at Kentucky were almost unprecedented. Now, what's going to be interesting is if he can continue that in the NBA, because that is not what we saw in high school, quite frankly. Then you add the defensive metrics. This guy is phenomenal with his hands. Last but not least, a 42-inch standing vertical. This was the surprise of the NBA Combine because Reed Sheppard was the best vertical athlete in the NBA Draft Combine. And as much as he surprised everybody this year at Kentucky, that was absolutely just the cherry on top. I, at least speaking for myself, did not see that coming. So you get somebody who can play on, off ball, who's going to compete and lead on both ends of the floor. And I think for a Washington team that is just really, really bad, you can't pass that up at this spot.
Adam, I think your evaluation of their roster largely matches their evaluation of their roster. And they believe, Michael Winger believes, talking to sources, and this can be a dangerous game sometimes in Washington. He thinks he's got 3 years or 4 years. He thinks he's been given a mandate to take time. Talked to one of his top talent evaluators the other day. They believe, like a lot of people, and we've talked about this, that while there's not a key guy, a certain guy at 1 to 5, that if you're smarter than everybody else, and every talent evaluator thinks they are, including this guy, you can find some guys in the lottery who are going to work if you outthink and outscout some of the other organizations. So it would make sense that they would want some extra picks, and this feels like something a guy they would invest in. They don't like what they have, but they feel like they can fill out a roster this year and next year through the draft and being smarter than everybody else and have more time. Their owner tends not to provide that, but this is what they think, and this pick makes sense in that context.
Congratulations to Kyle Kuzma for sticking around to build something lasting with Reed Sheppard. It's going to go great. All right, moving on to the Spurs. This is their second pick in the lottery. Had one a little bit earlier. Now we're going to go back to Kyle. Which way are they going with their second pick here at number 8, Kyle?
Yeah, we picked Stephon Castle at number 4. So we're going to come back here with Tidjane Salaun at number 8. We're going to give Victor Wembanyama another Frenchman to play with here. And the two actually know each other. Their sisters played together on the U16 FIBA circuit. Wemby earlier this year basically gave like a ringing endorsement of Salaun, saying like, I'm very confident in his work ethic and his ability. He's 6'9", a big wing. I think can play multiple positions. Someone who can defend multiple spots. Kind of a high level type of wing who I think can fit into what the Spurs are building long term.
Size and length. The guy speaks the same language as Wemby. Maybe they can start a book club together. You just want to keep that guy happy and put talent around him. I like it, Kyle. I like it.
Two Frenchmen in San Antonio. San Antonio now, the Paris of the Southwest. That's what everybody's saying. Moving on to pick number 9, the Memphis Grizzlies. Weird year for them. 27-55 last year, 13th in the East. Name somebody on that team. They were hurt last year. John Morant was hurt. He also had a 25-game suspension to start. Then he got injured. Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, Brandon Clark, Steven Adams, who got traded. All of them were hurt. They did, however, kind of hit on Gigi Jackson, who I like a little bit, and then Jaren Jackson Jr. Not as good defensively last year, but I still think a very useful player. Could be a bounce back season for them, Adam. What are they going to do here?
I think in this scenario, Dalton Knect is someone that makes a lot of sense because he is, in my opinion, the most NBA-ready scorer, maybe in the entire draft, certainly after you get outside the first 3 or 4 picks. This guy went to this guy went to Tennessee last year. Kentucky wishes they went there. And he put up major, major numbers, showing extreme shot-making ability, not just from behind the three-point line, but off the dribble as well. And he's going to be able to impact the game at the NBA level in a very similar way. So you're talking about a guy who fits that accelerated timeline in terms of being able to come in and impact winning right away. The biggest questions are on the defensive end of the floor, but I think he's going to be passable on that end, competent, if you will. Never going to be a standout, but it's just about being able to hold your own and being able to hide him a little bit if the offense will overcome, make it worthwhile to have him on the floor and deal with some of those defensive shortcomings. But I will say this, guys, I think that an ideal scenario for this team is to get up and draft a center. I think if there's any way they can move up and target Donovan Clingan, he would make a lot of sense next to Jaren Jackson. That is going to be a storyline that Memphis fans will want to follow heading into this draft.
Adam is right. They absolutely need a center. But if this guy is ready to contribute now, it hits on a really important point for Memphis. I think more so than any team that's in the lottery. They have to not just play well next year. The expectations in that front office, when everybody is healthy and Ja's back and all those guys are out there, is that they need to be a top 4 team in the Western Conference. Talking to people in that organization, that is a hefty order. Now the West is really hard, so there's going to be several teams that think that they're a top 4 team that are 5 or 6 or 7. I mean, they might go the West 13, maybe 14 teams deep. So they need a center, but it does make sense you would find somebody who can help in some facet immediately, because Memphis does not have time to develop a player or wait for somebody to figure out the NBA.
Yeah, Adam, I laughed a little bit when you said that he was NBA ready, because I looked at his age. He's 23. This guy will be collecting Social Security pretty soon, so he has to get into the league as soon as possible. But yeah, I would rather see them go with a big man, because after they move on from Steven Adams, they need somebody to take some of that load off of Jaren Jackson in the front court. All right, moving on to pick number 10, the Jazz. Dealer Danny Ainge, he's always got something up his sleeve. 31-51 last year. For a second there, Bill and I thought that maybe they'd make a play-in push, and then all of a sudden we were like, no, of course not. They're going to tank out of this thing and probably fall back in, as Bill mentioned, a very loaded Western Conference. Still got Lauri Markkanen. Colin Sexton had a good year last year. I'm a big believer in Keontae George. I think he's very good, but there's some other pieces they could move on from here. Could go in any number of directions here, Kyle. Which way? What do you think Danny Ainge is going to do here?
Yeah, we're going to take Nikola Topic here at number 10. I think he's a very important connective tissue, a piece that, is number 5 on the CBS Sports Big Board. So I think there's some value here as well. The best passer, I think, in this draft class, someone who's proven himself playing overseas at a high level already. Elite pick and roll weapon, can distribute at a high level, can pass, can create. So checks a number of boxes. Doesn't feel like the Jazz necessarily have someone who plays like his style. And so I think this would be a nice a way to add kind of some playmaking, some scoring, a number of different things that can complement Keontae George, Colin Sexton, what they already have in place.
Colin Sexton is a nice player, but we've talked about some teams that have maybe a 2 or 3 year window. Utah's building something. We know what Danny Ainge is about. It's not next year. The West is tough. So if you can bring in a guy who's the right playmaker, if they've identified a person maybe who can grow into being the point guard of the future, and you have some time to develop him, that makes a lot of sense for Utah.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what the Jazz do because, as we've mentioned so many times, the West is so loaded and they're not going to be contenders next year. They're probably not going to be in the playoffs next year. They've got Lauri Markkanen. Are you just sitting on him for the next couple of years? Are you going to move on from him? A lot of things for Danny Ainge to decide this offseason. All right, we got 10 picks in the books already for our mock draft. That leaves 4 more to go. We're going to finish this off coming up after a quick break. This is Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. It's our mock draft special. John Gonzalez, Bill Ryder, our 2 draft experts. Adam and Kyle are here. Kyle classing up the place with a tie. We appreciate that, Kyle. The Bulls pick number 11. No, seriously. I mean, Bill and I would do it in a burlap sack if we could.
This is me dressed up right here.
This is us dressed up right here. Pick number 11. We got 4 more to go, gang. Pick number 11 is the Chicago Bulls, who are just always in that purgatory of not terrible, but not good either. 9th in the East last year. Zach LaVine missed a big chunk of the season with a foot injury. DeMar DeRozan's a free agent. Nikola Vucevic getting a little long in the tooth, we'll say, a little older. Alex Caruso had a nice season, and then Lonzo Ball. Bill will report back on what LeVar thinks about him. Lonzo Ball's been out for forever as well.
It's all great.
Adam, yeah, everything's great. He's fine.
Everything's great.
All his sons,
nothing to see here.
All his sons are doing great. Yeah. Adam, what are the Bulls going to do here with pick number 11?
Well, I know they're not all going to wear Lonzo's shoes. That's for sure. What I think they're going to do is they're going to stick to their theme here, which is, there are higher upside guys still on the board here, but Devin Carter feels to me like a very Bulls kind of guy who can help them keep fighting for that play-in spot, keep fighting to try and make the playoffs, because Devin Carter is ready to make an impact. He is arguably the most competitive player in this draft. He's also one of the most athletic players in this draft. The son of longtime NBA player Anthony Carter, current NBA assistant coach, and he comes from that pedigree. This guy just knows what it's about. He knows how to work. He knows how to impact the game on both ends of the floor. This year at Providence, he proved that he could take on a signature role offensively. He answered a lot of questions about his shooting. But this is someone who's going to come in and just will his way into getting himself on the floor. And you add that to some of the nice young pieces that I think Chicago has started to subtly accumulate on the perimeter. And I think they've starting to get, they're walking that fine line of staying competitive and adding some long-term pieces. And I think Devin Carter kind of fits in line with that philosophy.
The Bulls should blow it up. I don't know what they're doing. Pick number 12 here, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Excellent season for them. First in the West, youngest 1 seed in NBA history. SGA was an MVP candidate. They got Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams, but they need a couple things here, Kyle. They need some size, both in terms of height and in terms of strength, and they could use some rebounding. They weren't a very good rebounding team here. Are you addressing any of those issues with pick number 12?
I am not. I'm going to take Cody Williams here. I'm going to address the vibes, John. I think the vibes are immaculate in Oklahoma City. You're going to add Cody Williams, the younger brother of Jalen Williams, who, as you mentioned, is an all-star for the Thunder. He was really good as a freshman at Colorado, shot 41.5% from three-point range, 95th percentile as a catch-and-shoot weapon. I think he's someone who eventually can play a really important role in this backcourt. I love his length, love his kind of mindset, and I think eventually this is a guy who could fit in very nicely with OKC and its young core.
Not enough people addressing the vibes. I actually like this. I like you're teaming up the 2 brothers. All right, moving on to pick number 13, the Sacramento Kings, also in that kind of purgatory area. Good team, just couldn't really move up out of that play-in. Mike Brown got an extension. They've got De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis to build around, and also Keegan Murray. Adam, back to you. Kings on the clock at number 13.
Yeah, Rob Dillingham, in this mock, he has slid maybe farther than he will on actual draft night. There's some concerns about his size and lack of physicality, but some people are mocking him as high as 5 or 6 right now. So if he's available at 13, Sacramento would jump all over him, especially given the fact that Malik Monk's future is far from certain. So this is an instant offense type of guard, one of the most skilled guards in the class. He's a dynamic shot maker. He can really handle the ball. The questions are twofold. They're about the physicality and the size, and then they are about the defensive end. I mean, this guy is a major liability defensively, but when he gets it going offensively, he can do things with the ball in his hands that maybe no one else in this draft can. He is super dynamic, is absolutely the word here. with what he can do with the ball in his hand. So it makes sense. If he falls, it makes sense given the uncertainty around Malik Monk.
Things could definitely use some extra offense, that's for sure. All right, moving on to 14, our last pick in the lottery. It wouldn't be the Wizards in the real world, but right now in our alternate universe that we've created, the Wizards traded back. They got 2 picks. This is the second of their picks that they got with that deal with between them and the Blazers. Kyle, round out the lottery for us.
Yeah, Mr. Finkelstein took Reed Sheppard at number 7 for the Wizards. I think that was a very safe pick. I'm going to take a big swing here, and literally, I'm going to take Zach Edey. He's 7'4", 300 pounds. He was the best player in college basketball the last 2 seasons. Led college basketball in rebounds. Led college basketball in points last season. Led college basketball in box plus minus. Every single stat you name it, he was dominating last season. It's probably a little bit higher than where I would personally take Zach Edey. But given the fact that the Wizards, again, in this fake scenario, have 2 top 14 picks, I think the chance that Zach Edey is eventually a really good potential starter at the NBA level with his size and the way he impacts the game, I'm willing to take a swing on him here at number 14.
Listen, let the record show if Boone is right on this, he can have all the flowers, because I think Zach Edey, while he was the most dominant college player in the country last year, is a backup big who can solely play drop coverage and pick and roll defense. That's my case.
My NBA evaluation will overlap with Adam's. I said earlier that Michael Winger believes he's got a lot of runway in Washington, D.C. running basketball operations. If he makes this draft pick, that is no longer true, and the runway evaporates. There's no runway anymore. That's my NBA analysis.
Oh, Bill, what did I promise? I promised trenchant NBA analysis, and you delivered it. I'm fascinated to see what this guy nicely done. I'm fascinated to see what he looks like in the NBA, because he doesn't really fit with the modern NBA, but who knows? Maybe he develops into a solid NBA player. But look at that. The 4 of us, 4 wide for the first time ever on Beyond the Arc, and we have done the first ever mock draft. It is in the books, but there's one name that we did not mention. That's Bronny James. We're going to discuss him at length coming up on Beyond the Arc. This is CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc, wrapping up our special mock draft edition. Guy that didn't get taken by either Adam or Kyle in the lottery. Very hot topic. Bronny James decided to leave school. I thought he should have gone back, but I'm not his dad. He decides to stay in the draft. There's been a lot of conversation about this. We've discussed it. Bill was at the NBA draft combine. We talked about how he looked. I am very susceptible to, you guys mentioned Ron Holland's highlight videos. I watched Bronny James jump in the gym and then shoot 3-pointers by himself. And as somebody who every offseason when Ben Simmons was with the Sixers would see him shoot in an empty gym and was convinced that he would then develop a 3-pointer, I'm kind of in on Bronny James. Adam, where are you on Bronny?
Here's what I will say, and I've been saying this, and Boone can back me up here. I've been saying this for the better part of the last year. I don't think it's possible to remove Bronny from LeBron. Bronny's in this draft because he's LeBron's son. I think he's going to be on the Lakers because he is LeBron's son. To be clear, that is not a criticism of his ability. I think he held his own at the combine as he did last year at the McDonald's All-American game. But this is something that is rooted in history. It's been over 2 years now since LeBron James started to tell us that the last thing he wanted to do in his NBA career was to play with his son. He said that on multiple occasions. And when LeBron James speaks, I think there's a reason behind it. I think history has shown that. So he said it multiple times. Then this past winter, he said Bronny could help us right now. Now, they've tried to walk back that narrative in the last couple of weeks and months. But if you look at some of the things that have happened, like Bronny is supposedly only going to work out for the Lakers and the Suns. He supposedly only wants a guaranteed deal as opposed to Rich Paul. Those are all indicators that they are discouraging other people from taking him in the second round. So I'm going to continue just to scream it from the rooftops. Bronny James is going to be a member of the Lakers next year. I think it's right in front of our face. I'm not sure why more people aren't acknowledging it. And it just is what it is. And people are going to say, like, oh, we averaged this many points at USC last year. It doesn't matter, people. LeBron James is going into potential free agency if he opts out of this contract. He's got all the leverage in the world. And as I've said before, this guy's like the Tom Brady of the NBA. He defies age. And right now he looks like he's going to continue to be an impact player and command a multi-year, 3, I believe, is the max he can get, another multi-year contract. Why wouldn't the Lakers take Bronny James at 55 or whatever it is? The risk far outweighs the reward of saying, you know what, I think we're going to take a flyer on somebody else in the second round.
I'm not sure we've ever had a story that better defines how LeBron James breaks and redefines the physics of how things are supposed to work. Think about this, and everything Adam said is right. LeBron James is pulling every lever he has to make sure teams don't draft a player who shouldn't even be in the draft and is not a first or a second round talent. I mean, that's the fact. Every person I've talked to, and it's a lot of top level NBA guys who scout for a living or are in front offices who have come out to LA when Bronny was at USC, said basically what John said. Really good NBA prospect, go to college another year or two. I will say this, though, Adam. You're right. There is zero chance in hell the Lakers are passing at 55 on Bronny. I can't tell if they're messing with me or not, but I've certainly talked to people in the NBA. But there's some snark in there who have said there might be a world where someone will take Bronny before 55, either because you control him. I mean, how much leverage does LeBron have on you if he's not in your organization? Very little. You draft Bronny, he's not going to play in Europe. And so I think it's 95% he's going to be a Laker. And Sam Presti would have to move around because he's not in the right position to do this. But Sam Presti doesn't care about being popular whatsoever. And he's got a lot of picks he's not going to use in the years ahead. Pat Riley is still, and I have a lot of sources in Miami from my days covering the Heat, very mad at LeBron James. It might be petty to draft Bronny James, but he's petty when it comes to Bronny's dad. So I do think there's a small chance where someone, God, I hope it wouldn't be the first round, maybe early in the second round, thinking that they could take Bronny, turn him into a developmental project, and lure dad, maybe not this year, but in a year or two, because LeBron has that player option, is in the realm of possibilities. But Adam's right. LeBron plans for him to be a Laker. The Lakers, I think, plan for him to be a Laker. And presuming he's there at 55, he will be a Laker.
All right, I got to ask this. Can I jump at Boone? And I promise I will give you the floor. But,
go for it.
The team that takes him, you're basically saying, because Clutch isn't going to support it. So your basic Clutch is the agency that represents Bronny, that LeBron is very closely associated with. They represent LeBron. You're basically defying Clutch if you take him. Again, I just don't think that is worth it for anybody, but I defer to Boone on the rest of the point.
Yeah, I would not take Bronny James with a first-round pick. I think it's okay to take him with a second-round pick. Ultimately, I think this is a guy who should have came back to college, averaged 4.8 points, 2.1 assists per game last season. But I think the context is important. This is a guy who suffered cardiac arrest last season before his freshman year at USC, wasn't cleared to start the year. And has had a really good pre-draft process, had a 40.5-inch max standing vertical leap. As John mentioned, he looked really good shooting in an empty gym when no one was defending him. I watched him in person in the Stars 3-point shooting drill. And obviously, yes, the 3-point shooting drill does not project how well a player is going to fare in the NBA. But I'm kind of in on him too. He's had a really good pre-draft process. I think he's worked his way into being a potential top 60 prospect in this class. And if he gets picked higher than that, wouldn't totally surprise me. I think 55 to the Lakers would make a lot of sense. Picking him higher, though, I think it's a risky proposition.
Ben Simmons would disagree with you that the shooting drills don't forecast some sort of improvement. This is going to be the season, by the way, for Ben Simmons. Quickly, Bill, he had invites to work with 10 teams or to work out with 10 teams, and he's only going to visit the 2. I hate that.
Look, I hate it too. And I hear what Adam said about Clutch, and you're right. You're right for now. There's a lot of resentment out there toward Clutch Sports and LeBron by extension and the control that he has. There's going to come a point where I think there's going to be blowback. And this just adds to that. The fact that the young man won't even go do the workouts and just go through the motions. You're right, John. I don't think it reflects well on him. I don't think it reflects well on his dad. And I know his dad does not care.
All right. Well, that's it for us today. For Adam and Kyle and Bill, we'll see what happens with Bronny. But for now, we'll be back tomorrow with Ashley Nicole Moss. Thank you so much for tuning in to Beyond the Arc. And this is CBS Sports Network.